The next thing that we're going to be looking at is implementations and interfaces. Now I have a very simple class here. I shamelessly stole the idea from Laravel. Hopefully Taylor won't mind. But I have a protected items array here. I have an add method, so all we're doing is adding a value to this array. I have a set method which just is the same as add, but it allows us to specify a key. And then we have toJSON, which basically returns a JSON encoded version of this array. So here I've instantiated the class to create a new object. I've added foo and bar, and I've just echoed collection to JSON. So if we look at this in the browser, you'll see our JSON formatted array. Now what I want to do is I want us to be able to call echo count C, and I want that to count the items in this array. And if we look at this now, we're going to get 1 because one object is equal to 1, obviously. So the way we do this is we add up here, similar to the extends, except we change this to implements, and we use countable, which comes with PHP by default. And if we look at this now in the browser and hit refresh, we're going to get this fatal error. Class collection contains one abstract method and must therefore be declared abstract or implement the remaining method's countable count. So here we're getting this countable count little hint. So it's telling us to implement this method here, so count. So let's just implement that now. So public function count. Now if we refresh, we get 0 because we didn't actually do anything with this. So if we just return something like 5, hit refresh, we get 5. So all we have to do now is return the count this items. And because we set 2 items in here, we're going to get 2. Simple as that. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to do echo JSON encode collection. And of course, we're going, well, we don't get an error. We get a JSON formatted collection. But we can change this to return the items. So we need to implement another interface, and we do this by adding a comma and then specifying a next interface. And another example of a PHP interface is JSON serializable, and I spelled that wrong. JSON serializable, is that right? I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So class collection, we're getting the same error as before. Class collection contains one abstract method and must therefore be declared abstract. We'll look at this later in another video. Or implement the remaining methods JSON serializable, JSON serialize. So let's copy this, and because we already implemented this method just under a different name, we just have to change the method name. So hit refresh and we get our JSON array. So now we can count and we can use JSON encode. Now what I want to look at is how we can create our own interface and have our class implement it. So I'm going to get rid of everything, so I just have an index file, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this talk interface. There's a few naming conventions when it comes to interfaces. Usually when we want to create a class, we create, the file name would be something like foo.php, the first letter being a capital. With interfaces, there's 2 main methods that I've seen people use. They either prefix the file with an I, well actually 3 methods, or they prefix it with an I and an underscore. And I've also seen foo interface like so, and that's the way I prefer, so I'm going to be using that. So we're going to call it talk interface. And we declare an interface using the interface keyword and then our name, just like so. Now what we can do is declare a method. So public function talk, and this is going to look a little weird to you. Usually we'd have curly braces like this. In an interface we just add a semicolon to the end of the line, and that's our interface created. So now let's include that interface or that file. Make sure we didn't get any errors. Great. Now I'm going to create a couple of classes. I'm going to call it dog and cat.php, and these are both going to be classes. So class dog, and in here we're going to have class cat, and these are both going to implement talk interface. Just like we did earlier, we had implements countable and JSON serializable or something like that, but instead we're replacing this with our own interface. So I'm going to copy this for cat as well. And now, well, first we need to include this file. So require dog, and let's instantiate it. And now we're going to get an error. Oh, this should be talk interface. Hit refresh and we get this same error. So class dog contains one abstract method and must therefore be declared abstract or blah blah blah. Implement the remaining methods talk interface talk, which is that abstract method that we created here. So now we need to create that method just like before we created count and JSON serialize, except this is our own custom interface. So public function talk, and we're going to return woof because that's how a dog talks. So now if we go back to our index and say dog talk, and we have to echo that, we get woof. Now let's do the same for cat. So let's change this to cat, and let's just comment this out so we don't get an error. Hit refresh and we get the same error, so we need to implement that method. So public function talk, and what does cat say? Meow. So now we can uncomment this, go to our browser, and we get meow. So let's create our dog again. We'll echo cat talk and a line break and dog talk. Meow and woof. Perfect. So the way to think of an interface is a blueprint for a class. I should have mentioned that earlier.